1996, a very important year in video games. Yes, the Nintendo 64 was released, but it was also the year that GameFAQs.com and all the wonderful cheats and complete guides that come with it was launched, meaning less controllers would get thrust in the wall in frustration the world over. It was alright back then, as a average PlayStation controller was under £25, but have you seen the price of a PlayStation 4 controller of late, particularly during lockdown? They're crazy money, and they don't even have the good graces to cling to their moorings via a cable anymore. Anyway, that cable gave you a chance at redemption. It was also the year that video games companies started to look at the success of the PlayStation and went, yeah, nah, I'm out. As all sorts of consoles were binned. The 3DO, the Jaguar, the 32X, the Mega CD, the Virtua Boy and the CDI all ended their short lives in 1996 with the biggest console culling of all time. It was bloody. The cute creatures of Pokemon were also birthed out, covered in amniotic fluid, although you didn't see that when it was ported onto the Game Boy. Lara Croft and Chris Redfield wandered into the public consciousness, and in August, Valve formed. Whatever happened to Valve, eh? I hope that Gabe Newell fella doesn't have to use food banks these days. In the news, Take That split up, causing precipitation in teenage girls' eyelids, rather than the usual place of their birth canals, where Mark Owen and Gary Barlow were mentioned. Independence Day was the biggest movie of the year, even though it's a bit crap. Every time I see that bit where the dog outruns the explosion, I just think, that dog's dead now. I do that a lot. Every time I watch a TV show or a film from the 90s, I go, that dog's dead now, that cat's dead now. That monkey's dead now. They're all dead now. Yeah. And of course, we had the best summer of football ever, of course. It was Euro 96. Good old Euro 96. Gazza, Shearer, Tony Adams. And it was all ruined by cunts. Stefan cunts. Well, Stefan, you can take away our trophy, but we had a human Pringle logo that was named after ejaculate. That's something you'll never have. Good old seaman. For a game to qualify for my best of the year, it has to have come out in that particular year, in its original form. As an example, I might have enjoyed Final Fight on the Super Nintendo. I don't know why it's the worst version, but I couldn't have it in my best of, say, 1991 year, because it had come out in 1989. Do you see how that works? The only exception to this is if the game is massively different. Think the arcade version of Double Dragon compared to the NES version of Double Dragon. They're vastly different games. Doom is legendary, so when id Software, and it is id, not ID, I've got it wrong all these years, decided that they wanted to move to full 3D after the iconic cardboard beasties of that all-time classic, they had a tough act to follow. Boy, did they. Did they succeed? Ish. At the time, Quake was revolutionary. Like dogs, you can look up and down, you can jump, and you can play with friends online in a much easier manner, thanks to some dedicated software that made it a lot easier to find them. Quake lost a bit of the magic that Doom had, though. Its stylistic choice of rust and medieval tunnels has aged terribly. Boy, I know that feeling. The look and shoot gameplay of its forebear is also gone, especially with all these pesky extra dimensions going on. It's massively influential and it plays fine, but its legend has been diminished because Father Time, he's a cruel bastard. A cruel bastard indeed. Nights into Dreams by Sonic Team was an interesting look into what Sonic would end up looking like on the Sega Saturn, if it ever came out. Uh-oh, Spaghetti-O. Nights, with the aid of the Saturn 3D controller, looped around in the beautiful 3D landscape, spinning gracefully about in a dreamy manner. The aim of the game had you as knights tasked with collecting orbs within a tight time limit to progress to the next level. Knights was gorgeous and had a real sense of free-flying freedom, and it had an excellent soundtrack too. It was a real innovator of the 5th generation of consoles. However, I would like to point out that none of my dreams look like this. They're usually a lot seedier. I love weirdness. Playing as an identikit gruff 30-year-old male protag barking out to old hero talk in grey and brown environments, pew-pew shooting and sliding on his knees to wall cover, well, that can be fun. But I'd rather be a flat-rapping beagle in his efforts to impress a sexy flower by learning how to drive and do kung fu. That's a story I could identify with. I've been happily courting a geranium myself for 3 months. So the game of Parappa the Rapper, well, it's simplistic. It's a proto-rhythm action game. But you know what? The silly raps, the gorgeous character design by artist Rodney Greenblatt, and its relentlessly daft charm has lasted with me for some time. I still go back to Parappa the Rapper every now and again, and I bloody well enjoy it. Psygnosis and their driving games were an early success for the PlayStation. Wipeout 2097 and the Destruction Derby series were among the biggest sellers on Sony's maiden console during its early days. And so when Psygnosis and Bizarre Creations combined to put out the first fully licensed Formula 1 title, well, a lot of people were made very happy indeed. All of the drivers, cars and tracks of the 1995 season were there rendered in those delicious 3D polygons. An early attempt at a real-world driving sim on the PlayStation, it sold a megaton and even gives you the option of the nerdy commentary of the excitable granddad de jour, Murray Walker, or the fret wankery pomp of Steve Vai and Joe Satriani. Now there's a choice. Formula 1 is one of my first PlayStation memories and one of my best ones. There has been a lot of Metal Slug games, not as many as Land Before Time movie sequels, but we're talking apples and oranges here. Metal Slug is a splendidly pretty run and gun, an ageless Contra-like with a wicked sense of humour, fluid animation drawn by the hand itself, and relentless action. One of the best Neo Geo games. Thankfully, it's been ported to everything from the Nintendo Wii, to the PlayStation 2, to the sandwich toaster you bought in Wilco. And you should go, you should find, and you should play it. It's a classic. It plays as good today as it did back then. A great title. Old Pyramid Tits has become such a part of public consciousness that it's bizarre to think there was a time where she didn't exist. She may have had more makeovers than a series of Queer Eye for a straight guy, but it was here that she made her debut. A vast adventure in labyrinthine caves and tombs, the game absolutely dripped in atmosphere, ably aided by its orchestral music theme. The warpy textures and indistinct polygonal edges make it a bit of a chore to play compared to its release heyday, but Tomb Raider was an awe-inspiring treat and one of the most influential titles of the generation. Anyone not terrified when they saw that T-Rex wandering into the playfield is an absolute liar. What a classic. Duke Nukem, the big idiot, made his first foray into the third dimension and charmed us all immediately. You've got the point and shoot frenetic gameplay of Doom right here, but you've transported it from the Mars and Hell environment to an interactive, recognisably earthen city, and you've replaced the mute Doom guy with a wisecracking, film-referencing 80s movie dumbbell pumper. And it all fits together extremely well. Duke Nukem 3D is the first evolution of the Doom game and a great first indicator of just what the genre could do. And no, I'm not going to mention Duke Nukem Forever. It's unfair. Resident Evil was not the first, but it was probably the most important survival horror game. It certainly brought the genre to the mainstream. It's schlocky, but it was the grown-up adult title that the 5th generation marketing had promised, a million miles from Mario, Sonic and Capcom's own Mega Man. Whether that's a good thing or not, I'm not sure. Tension, jump scares, gore, all components of the horror movie genre, and all blended together in this atmospheric puzzle-packed action-adventure. Conserving ammo and managing your health kits and herbs were important lessons to learn, and it ramped up the nervous anxiety of the gameplay. To think, zombies were a relatively unused villain type in games back then. How times have changed. Resident Evil then, an all-time great. Now, I love Super Mario Kart. It was number 1 in one of my lists, so many years ago. But it was very, very flat. For a world built on mountains, ledges, hills and caverns, the Mushroom Kingdom of Mario's first karting adventure was like a chest tattoo of Amsterdam on Keira Knightley. On new hardware, Mario found his contours, the creative shackles removed along with the hardware restrictions. The courses became a lot more varied and fun to play. Coupled with a 4-player mode and a great expansion of my favourite mode of all, the battle mode, Mario Kart 64 was the second best game of the year and the second best N64 game of the year. After Mario 64. What an announcement of intent by Nintendo. When the first game of the system is this good, imagine how much better the games on the N64 will get. Mario 64 did the 3D platformer thing and it hit a home run, scored a hat-trick and any other sporting reference you want to make. While other companies struggled to get it right, Nintendo just strolled in and made the best 3D platformer of all time on their first go. Just slapped it on the table like they're big old dicks. I don't think they've even topped it since. Even now, 24 years later, I don't think anyone has. Mario Galaxy and Mario Odyssey are great titles, fantastic even, but they're not perfect like Mario 64. The camera, the control, the challenge, the replayability. Mario 64 is as iconic as the first game in the series, old Super Mario Bros. On the NES. It's a stunning piece of software, and my favourite game on the system by a long, long way. And that was it for 1996. Next year, oh my, it's a big one. The year 1997. Many say the best in video game history. Did you guess it was going to be 1997 next? How did you do that? You're super smart. Now, Kay, thanks. Bye.